Welcome, everybody, to the Real Agents of Change. We love to bring experts who know a little something about charitable real estate and all the different aspects of it that we don't know, keeping in mind that one of our favorite sayings is, do what you do best and refer the rest. So today I'm going to refer the rest, meaning donor-advised funds, and the ability to fund nonprofits all over the world from donor-advised funds, to our experts at University Impact. Riley reached out to me 3-4 months ago. We've been building a nice relationship, and I invited him to give you the lowdown on donor-advised funds and University Impact. Riley, take it away.
Tammy, we are so grateful for you hosting us, and it's been a pleasure to meet and get to know you. And we love to see other players in the game that are making a difference. And we love that phrase of do what you do best and refer the rest. And it's been amazing to collaborate with other partners that are experts in their area to really create meaningful impact in the world. And so we're thankful that you're having us today, and we're excited to talk about donor advised funds. So at this point, I'll go ahead and show our slideshow here. And we'll, oops, a little technical difficulty there. There we go. So thank you for the introduction, Cami. Just to introduce myself and our organization, my name is Riley LeSueur, and I work with an organization called UI Charitable Advisors. We're formerly known as University Impact. That's still there in the UI, but our new name is UI Charitable Advisors. And we are a philanthropic planning firm that we provide tools and resources to individuals, financial professionals, and nonprofits to maximize their charitable impact. And really, so we're a 501c3 public nonprofit, and our mission is twofold. It's to find and support organizations that are creating meaningful impact in the world. And the second is to create the next generation of social impact leaders. And we do that by, like I said, providing tools and resources to facilitate charitable gifts, and do that in an effective way, both from a tax standpoint and from an impact standpoint. And so today what we're going to go over is, one, understanding donor advised funds, how they work, and what piece or role that they play in the equation with charitable giving. We're going to talk about the power of complex assets, and in particular, real estate, and how that can be leveraged to accomplish philanthropic goals. And the last thing we're going to talk about is maximizing charitable impact, which is the reason we're all here, the real reason. So donor advised funds, commonly called a DAF, the way that they work, essentially it's a charitable giving bank account where the client will make a contribution to their DAF, receive an immediate tax deduction. Once those assets are in the DAF, they can be invested for tax-free growth by the client's financial advisor. And from there, the client can issue grants to their favorite charities over time on their own timeline. It's like I said, it's like a charitable giving bank account. So they can log online, find the charity that they want to support, and send money out of their donor advised fund. And it's a tool that's becoming more and more popular every year. A study done from 2017 to 2021 showed that there was a 104% increase in the total number of DAFs, 114% increase in the total assets that are held in a DAF, and a 50% increase in the amount of grants issued from DAF. So every year that number is growing, and people are realizing that this is the best and most flexible tool to accomplish their charitable goals. And here's a comparison between DAFs and private foundations, which is a common comparison between the two. And so we'll kind of go fairly quickly through each of these items here, and really to illustrate that DAFs really are the best tool to accomplish your philanthropic goals. So first thing is fees. With the DAF, there's no startup costs. It's a very low administration fee, and you can start a DAF or open one immediately. There's no waiting period. With private foundations, it can take several months, and the startup costs and the cost of operations is extremely expensive. And again, it takes a long time to set up a private foundation. And with donor advised funds, you can pretty much do almost anything that you would do out of a private foundation. You can support organizations both here and abroad. You can make grants, you can make impact investments. The only difference here is that with a donor advised fund, the main limitation is that you cannot issue a grant to an individual, which in some circumstances you can do out of a private foundation. So in the case of a wealthy family that wants to employ their children to manage their money, that's something that would make more sense to use a private foundation. From a tax standpoint, we won't go through the real nitty-gritty of these numbers, but as you can see, it's much more tax effective to use a donor advised fund. It's essentially the same as donating directly to a public charity. And another thing that's worth noting is with securities donating to a donor advised fund, that's deducted at fair market value. Whereas with private foundations or other with non-public securities, it's deducted at cost basis. So a lot of the times that can make a significant difference. From a succession standpoint, donor advised funds, you can have a completely custom succession plan where you can name individuals like your children or grandchildren as successor donor advisors, but you can also list charities as the beneficiary. So it's completely customizable to the donor's preference. With private foundations, a lot of the times you have to be confirmed by the board, and it can be a long drawn out process. There are no minimum distribution requirements for DAFs. With foundations, there's a 5% minimum distribution of assets every year. And the big one here at the end is that anonymity is you can remain anonymous with your contributions from a DAF. And so a lot of the times people like to keep their charitable giving private, and with the DAF, they can accomplish that. And so there are circumstances where a foundation makes more sense, but almost all the time, a DAF is a better tool and more flexible for the donors. And so here's why. With a DAF, you can, one, contribute a wide variety of assets. So it's not just cash, and we'll get into this in a little more detail after this. Like I mentioned earlier, two, the assets in DAF can be invested. So you can grow your initial contribution, and that can be grown without paying taxes on the growth because it's owned by a public charity, and that gives you more money to give down the line. And three, it's a more flexible tool that allows clients to accomplish their philanthropic goals and maximize the charitable impact they make in the world. So let's talk about this a little more. What can be contributed to a donor advised fund? So obviously you can contribute traditional assets like cash and public securities, but you can also donate complex assets. Big examples here are private business interests. So a donor owns a business, they can donate partial ownership or ownership shares in their business. Real estate, this is why we're here talking about it today. Cryptocurrency. We've seen fine art donations like stamp collections, coin collections. We've accepted a yacht as a donation. So really there's a wide variety of assets that can be contributed to a DAF. And that's really where the power of complex assets comes in here. And this is something that Cami does an excellent job of explaining, is looking at, and we'll look at this graph here showing the net worth by asset type. So this is how, on average, Americans hold their wealth. So you can see here that it's about half is in investment and retirements account, about 37.9%, and we'll get to that here, is in real estate. And then the other 10% is between cash and other assets. So on average, cash represents about 7.2% of the average American's net worth. Now let's look at real estate. That represents 37.9% of net worth. And these numbers can vary depending on what sources you look at. But now let's look at charitable donations by asset types. So cash represents 86% of charitable giving, when it's only, and we'll go back here, 7.2% of donors' net worth. So there's a disconnect there in what they're giving to charity and how they hold their wealth. And Really, it's because people don't realize at every step of the way, clients don't realize that they can make these types of donations. A lot of the times that their advisors don't realize they can make these different types of donations. And the charities don't realize that there's ways for them to accept it without accepting the additional liability that comes with complex assets. And so that's where UI Charitable Advisors comes to play. And so here's some of the benefits or how it works with donating complex assets. So it's a strategy where clients can convert their hard, illiquid assets into charitable dollars that they can use to create impact. And so the way it works is typically there's a sale coming up, whether that's with their real estate or with a business. And so the client will contribute a portion of their ownership stake to their DAF ahead of liquidation. And sometimes they'll donate all of it. Sometimes it's a rental property that they're not using anymore and they want to donate the entire thing to charity. So University Impact, UI Charitable Advisors will liquidate that asset to fund the DAF. And then the client can recommend grants over time to support charities and causes that they want to support. And so let's give the example of real estate. Let's say a client, like I said, they have a property that they are planning on selling, and they would rather just give the money to charity. And so really there's three options for donors and what they can do. One, they can sell the asset. Let's say in this case, real estate, they sell the property and donate the proceeds, all of it or part of it, to charity. Two, they can donate that asset directly to the charity. And three, they can donate the asset to a DAF before liquidating it, like I mentioned earlier. And so why would you do that? Why would you donate your ownership in the property or in the business before selling it instead of just donating cash after the sale? Really, the biggest reason, or at least let's talk about the tax reasons right now, there's two major benefits. One, you avoid capital gains taxes on the portion of the asset that you donate. And two, you get a personal income tax deduction for the fair market value of the asset. So it's extremely tax advantageous, but it also, like I mentioned earlier, it allows clients to convert these hard illiquid assets into dollars that they can give to charity. So let's look at some numbers here. And we'll go through two different scenarios. Okay, so let's say they don't make the donation to charity after they sell the property, or they can donate it before and then sell the property. So here's if they sold the property and made the donation afterwards. And these will be some kind of extreme numbers, really just to illustrate the point. So we'll go through these. Let's say the property sells for $2 million and they only bought it for $100,000. So the taxable amount here would be $1.9 million. And assuming, and this can vary by state, we'll say 20% capital gains and a 7% state tax. So your taxable amount's 1.9 million. $513,000 are paid in capital gains, leaving you with 1.3 million in after-tax equity. So you make your $1 million donation after the sale, leaving you with $387,000. And then you get your $1 million deduction and you save about $359,000 in taxes. So let's say they make the donation before the sale. Sale price is $2 million. They donate $1 million in equity before the sale takes place. Their cost basis is still $100,000. And the taxable amount now is only $900,000. So that brings the taxable amount down, leaving it with $243,000 in capital gains. So almost $300,000 less that they're paying in capital gains, leaving them with $657,000 left in their pocket. And they already made the donation. So again, they have $657,000 left here. And so at the end of the day, they're paying less in taxes, they have more in their pocket, and the same amount of money goes to the charity. And if you compare the numbers to where if they donated the entire portion of the property or the entire property, there's more money that's going to charity, more money stays in your pocket. And so really, if you're planning on being charitably active and you have an illiquid asset, again, let's stick with the example of real estate. it's a no-brainer to do it through a donor advised fund, because again, the charity gets more money, you have more money in your pocket, and you're paying less in taxes. And so that's really what we're here for, is maximizing charitable impact. And so DAFs really are the best tool to do that. When donors give through a DAF, it enables donors to be more thoughtful about how they can give and where they can give. Because with the donor advised fund, you're separating the tax deduction from when you're giving the money to charity. And so this gives donors more time to think about where they want to give. A common misconception in the world of finance is that donors don't give to charity because they don't think they have enough money, they don't have enough for retirement, or they won't have enough money to leave to their heirs, when in reality, the reality is that they're afraid that their money is not going to be used effectively. And so, and a lot of the times they hold their wealth in different types of assets, and it's not in cash. So this enables donors to be more thoughtful of how they give and where they give. They're able to conserve their cash by donating alternative assets. And they can also receive philanthropic support. When working with the donor advised fund, particularly, that's one of our focuses here at UI Charitable Advisors, is we're there to be a support team, almost as if you had your own fully staffed private foundation, and finding and sourcing opportunities to give. And so a lot of the times the donor will care about a certain geographic region, or maybe a certain impact sector like education or poverty that they want to support, but they don't know where or what organizations to give to. And so that's where we can come in by proactively sourcing opportunities that we've pre-vetted to ensure that they're using the money effectively. And that provides a lot of peace to our donor base. With donor advised funds, there's more options to give. So like Cami mentioned, we're here to create impact, and not just, we recognize that there's organizations outside of the United States that are also making a difference. And so with our donor advised fund, you're able to give to both domestic and international organizations. And you also have the opportunity to make impact investments. So that's a topic for another day, but impact investing is finding market-based solutions for social or environmental issues. So we also recognize that sometimes there's organizations that are for-profit institutions that are making a significant difference in the world. That could be an ed tech or any other social impact sector. And so you can make loans or equity investments in for-profit institutions that are making a social impact. And that's what we have for you today, Cami. Like I said, we're here to make a difference and help people and give them the resources that they need to create the most impact. And we're here to provide the tools to do that.
I love, love, love. I was taking a lot of notes. So I got some questions for you. Let me fix our screen here so we can both be on. All right. So when you mention foundations, this might be a dumb question, but is a community foundation a foundation and falls under those guidelines you were mentioning?
No, that would be a separate type of entity. I'm referring to private foundations where it's like a family foundation.
Got it. So if someone says, I have a, Smith Family Foundation, obviously that's what you're talking about. But when people use the word foundation, it depends on how it was set up, family versus community foundation, that sort of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And community foundations are excellent organizations. Typically, the difference between a community foundation and an organization like UI Charitable Advisors is that typically community foundations are focused either on a geographic region or on a certain area of focus. So sometimes that's a religion or a certain impact sector. And
Sure.
so with Charitable Advisors, we have a very broad approach to impact, where we will support organizations in any area of the world, any area of the United States, and really any area of impact as well. So we're much more donor directed as far as what areas that we support.
Now, I didn't know that impact investing, that you can actually give money from your donor advised fund to a for-profit if they're actually having impact. Talk about that just a little bit. Let's do a whole
Sure.
special on that, but just a little bit about it.
Yeah, absolutely. So there are certain guidelines that you have to demonstrate to the IRS that those types of organizations are making an impact. But it is an option that you can make out of donor advised funds, which is something that's not commonly known. A great example of this, one of the portfolio companies that we've supported is a company called Talimabad, which is an ed tech company in Pakistan. Not to give you the whole spiel on it, and the founder can tell you better than I can, but there's a huge problem in Pakistan in educating the youth. Their population is growing significantly and at a very rapid rate, and the government can't keep up with the population growth. And so there's a lot of kids that are not in school. And so Talimabad essentially is the Sesame Street of Pakistan. And this entrepreneur came up with the idea. He digitized the school curriculum and was able to make it available to millions of kids. And then shifted to opening his own schools, which he was able to open, I believe, again, I didn't come prepared to give you exact numbers, but I believe over 600 schools in a year. And it's a for-profit business, but he's clearly making an impact in the world. And so we were able to make equity investments into Talimabad out of donor advised funds and help him grow. And so it's growing even more now.
Makes me wonder, with us educating nonprofits about charitable real estate, if we're not an impact
Right.
kind of a organization. Now, you mentioned that it's something that not many people know about, but donor advised funds in general is something that people don't know about. Just this morning, I was having a conversation with a doctor who donated a building last year in St. Paul, Minnesota, to Salvation Army. And he had bought the building at auction for $700,000. He and his partner had delusions of grandeur of doing their own kind of a homeless shelter kind of a thing. They realized, wow, this is way more work than we thought. And they realized when they had it appraised, bought it for $700,000, appraised at $4 million, that when they donated it, by the time they wrote it off, they're writing off more than they paid for it anyway. So they're doing the right thing, and it ended up being. And so with all that being said, I was talking to him about you guys and donor advised funds, and he was like, I had no idea that we could donate something this year, not even know who we're giving it to, and put it in a donor advised fund. He said, I never even would have thought of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's definitely something that's not commonly known to the general public. It is growing as a popular tool in the world of finance, but it's something that we're trying to get the word out, because again, it's one of the best vehicles that you can use to accomplish your philanthropic goals. And it really provides the most flexibility at every step of the way.
I have to tell you, when you were showing your 3 ways that a donor could facilitate a gift and give the money to the nonprofit, I was so excited and relieved to see that it's the same basic explanation we give.
Absolutely. And Cammie, I love the way that you phrase it, where it's, you can sell the property and donate it to charity, and that's the worst way. You can try and give it to the charity directly, and that's the hardest way. Or you can use a specialized nonprofit like UI Charitable Advisors to facilitate that donation to where you're getting the tax advantages, the nonprofit's getting the money, and neither of them are taking on the liability of that kind of transaction, because it can be tricky.
It's the win-win-win way.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Let me see. What else? I had notes for myself. I love when you said, we think that people aren't giving more because they're afraid, because they're so cash conservative, they're afraid they won't have enough for retirement. But the fact is, if you dig a little deeper, they're not giving more because they're afraid it won't be used properly. And I cannot tell you how often I will, just in conversation, I'll use the name of a nonprofit that just is top of mind. I won't use any right now. And the person will say, oh, I would never give to them. I've heard they do this, and I've heard that their CEO makes that. And it's so true. So to your point about being able to give anonymously, when someone, I also think that people who are really entrenched, whether it's their church or they're on the board of directors at the Boys and Girls Club or whatever nonprofit it is, they don't give more because they almost feel like people would be looking at them like, do they think we're using the money right? And
Yeah,
are they going to be under a microscope because they gave?
sure.
So the anonymous thing, I would think, is actually way more popular than people might think.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent point. It relieves pressure on both sides because, just like you said, sometimes I mean, if you use the example of like a small church and someone wants to give a large donation to their church, maybe the donors are worried that they're going to be solicited constantly afterwards if they give a large donation. And maybe the church is nervous about, again, like you just said, of are they judging me for how we're using the money? And it relieves pressure on both sides. And just to touch on what you said about using money effectively as well. It really is a huge concern in the donor base and everyone. I mean, you hear horror stories all the time of nonprofits that are not using their money wisely. And so that's another area where we're trying to bridge that gap and find solutions there is sourcing and proactively looking for organizations that are making a meaningful difference.
Which is also why, as we wrap this up, I want to make a note to our listeners that in keeping with what if they don't use the money properly, if you donate a gift of real estate and it's got $500,000 in proceeds, and you really want your church or your veterans group or your homeless shelter, we're not picking on churches, I'm just thinking churches are a place that people go every Sunday and they know each other and they know what they need. And so if you're kind of like, well, if I would give them 500,000, I don't know if they'd manage it that well. I don't know if they'd burn through it. You don't worry about that, because when you put it with UI, you can say, give them 25,000 every 6 months
Yep.
anonymously. And you could
Mhm.
be sitting on the board helping to decide where the money goes. And everybody's just like, I wonder who this person is. And you're like, I don't know, but we need more pens. So let's,
Yeah. Absolutely. And while you're donating that $25,000 every 6 months, the rest of that money is being invested. And so you're
yes.
making money that and growing the corpus of your DAF and having more to give in perpetuity. And the other thing with donor advised funds is that you can add custom instructions to your grant. So if there's a specific use you want that money to be used for, you can instruct the nonprofit with how you want that money to be used. So that also is a part of the solution as well to ensuring that these organizations are using the money properly.
Well, I'm just thrilled to have you today, Riley. This week made 3 years. It was our 3 anniversary that you came to our master class this week. Thank you for being there and celebrating with us. And I tell you, for the first year, we didn't really talk much about donor advised funds, or if it was talked about, I wasn't talking about it. I didn't really know what it was. But then after that first year, we added that module because I think it's so important that everybody really understands why financial advisors like these things, why all nonprofits that we're helping to get funded should understand what they are. And
Mhm.
just, I just, it's a triangle of trust, as we
Mhm.
call it. There's the donor, there's the nonprofit, and there's the advisors. And
Mhm.
everybody really needs to understand what each other's uh what their wins and losses are in any of this. And the way that we do it, and the way you guys do it, the way we're doing it together, it's just flat out win for everyone. So to really know how other people are making money, or getting out of it what they want, leaving legacy, being able to fulfill their mission, etc., I think it helps everybody to step powerfully into taking action. Is there any final words for you today?
Just to add what you said about the different, with the triangle of trust and the different stakeholders involved, being educated and knowledgeable in charitable planning benefits everybody. The donors have a more effective strategy, both from an impact standpoint and from a tax standpoint, to give more effectively. The nonprofits, this opens up more opportunities for them to increase their fundraising when everyone's educated in philanthropic planning. And then the advisors increase their relationship with their clients, whether you're a real estate agent or a financial advisor or a CPA. When you're being involved in the charitable giving of your clients, that's increasing the trust. And I wholeheartedly believe that professionals that are working towards socially responsible and impactful giving are going to be more successful both professionally and personally, and that just adds an extra layer of meaning to their life and to their profession. And so it really benefits all parties to be knowledgeable in charitable planning.
Well, that's a mic drop moment. As we say, social responsibility isn't just the right thing to do, it's the necessary thing to do in business.
Yep, absolutely.
So thanks for being here, friends. Feel free to reach out to either one of us with further questions. As we say, do what you do best and refer the rest. So don't ask me about anything Riley does. Ask him, and vice versa, because that keeps everybody's hands clean. We stay in our own wheelhouse and stay with what we know best. So the Real Agents of Change signing out again. We'll see you on the next interview. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Cami.